This is part 3 of our class on how to make zipper boots. In the first 2 parts, we made the pattern and designed the boot. Welcome to Pomo Bespoke. So we started out with a main form, designed the standard pattern, and then made the several pattern pieces. So these are those pattern pieces that we created in the last class. Right now it is time for us to trace it out on leather and begin the process of clicking and closing. So I'm going to trace all of my pattern pieces on this coffee brown, I don't know which it is, piece of leather. So note how I'm placing them. Every single part would have 2 parts. So one part you flip over and do the second part. So that's 1, 2. So the back part, so that's for the second leg of the shoe, second leg, the first leg, the back part. Then the corresponding side, the first part and the second part. So you can see that we have traced out all of our pattern pieces on the leather. Right now we are simply just going to cut it out. The same thing we did for the uppers. This is what we're going to use for the lining. So we're going to stitch at that center line and at the back seam. So we stitch at the center line and at the back seam. You remember that when we made our patterns, we created stitching allowances and then folding allowances at the top line as well. So these are the pieces for the uppers. So this will either you turn it right side facing each other and stitch on the inside so that you can turn it around and have a hidden stitch. So the right side would face each other like so, and then you stitch on the flesh side, and ultimately you can flip it and turn it around and have a hidden stitch. The same thing will be done at the back seam. So the right side would face each other, you stitch at the center line of the back seam and flip it over to have hidden stitches. Of course, before you begin to stitch, ensure that you skive around your stitching allowances. A tutorial on how to skive is beyond the scope of this video, so I'm not going to dwell too much on how to skive. The basic principles are that you should have very sharp knives. You should learn how to sharpen your knives, and then you should just be very comfortable with using your skiving knives. So this is the point I was making. You see that at the top I have my folding allowance. I haven't stitched it yet, but I will stitch it up to that point where my thumb is so that I can install my zipper in between that part and then stitch. So the first 2 stitches you're going to do will be your center seams and your back seam. Then you do the same of course for your lining, install your lining, and then just test out everything to see that it matches. I have reinforced my seams with some adhesive tape just to prevent it from stretching or ripping apart at that seam. So you can see that this is the shoe after I have installed the zipper. And I guess that brings us to the close of part 1 right there where it should be. Class. In part 2 of this particular class, we will go into construction of the outsole, constructing the outsole pattern, and basically lasting the shoe. So I'm going to use the same size 40 last, but I'm going to make the outsole from another last. That last is very similar to the one that I'm using, only that it is much more elongated. It has the same heel height, the same dimensions, only that because it's a little bit more pointy than this one, it's a little bit longer than the one we designed our shoe in. So I'm going to cut the outsole to this pattern so that I can have an outsole pattern for both lasts, and then I'll trim the one I am using to size when it ultimately comes to that. But in your own case, it will be just enough if you just tape up the underside of your last and cut out the outsole pattern. That's all there is to it, really. All that you need to do is that when you're done, you take a measurement of the length. That measurement you will divide by 4 to get the measurement, the length of the heel part of the outsole. The line on which you're going to measure the heel part of the outsole, however, you divide the line that connects the two balls together into 2. You divide that line into 2, and then you draw from the center of the heel to that point, and then it is on this line that you're going to measure 1/4 of the entire length of the outsole. 1/4 of the entire length. So here it came to about 27 divided by 4 give us 6.75 thereabout. So we're going to mark 6.75 on this line, and then drawing right angles from both sides of the feather edge to meet that point, and then another right angle from that side to meet that point. And then when we have done that, we'll basically just add like a curve in between those two lines, and we would have the pattern for our heel. So that's our heel. We'll basically go ahead and cut out this outsole pattern. We are going to use it to design the outsole. Building up your outsole for a pair of high heel shoes is a little bit different from outsole for any other flatter shoes that aren't high heels. So, and that's simply because you need to install a metal shank in between several layers of your outsole material, if you're using leather or if you're using an outsole board. I'm using an outsole fiber board. I'm going to trace out 4 outlines of our outsole on this fiber board, and then 2 more that stop just a little above the ball points. So this is those 2 there. You can see that these 2 that I'm talking about, they elongate a little above, about 1.5 cm above the ball points. You see that, about 1.5 cm above the ball points. So we'll cut out all of this. So for each shoe, we're going to have basically 3 layers, 2 outsole patterns cut, and then this half size. So let's show a simple method of building the outsole, the shanked outsole for a high heel shoe. I have a video dedicated to this, but let's just do it quickly in this particular class. So the first thing you need to do is that you have to bend your metal shank to conform to the curvature of your high heel last. So you can't afford to have spaces. You see that space there? We're going to have to hammer this shank until it takes the shape of the curvature of the last. So let me show you the one that I have hammered. You see how it lies flush. Next thing is, having hammered it, we'll take the length between the center and where the shank starts. We'll mark that on the shorter outsole piece that we cut, and then that is where our shank is going to start ultimately. So we will start building our shank from this shorter one. We'll apply glue to it, and then also apply some glue to the outsole itself, and then glue that shank to this short fiberboard. Glue it first of all, and then laminate the rest of the outsole patterns that we have in between this short one that already contains the metal shank. So you can see here that I'm applying some glue to my shank. We'll let it dry for a bit. While we allow it to dry, we will add glue to the other parts, but let's just affix it to, so we will, because the fiberboard is very pliable, we will bend it to conform to the curvature of this shank. At first it might give you some trouble, but just bend it to conform, and then we punch the holes around the back of the shank itself. Just give ourselves indication of where those holes lie. Then we will stick on the first part of the outsole, and then through the holes that we had punched earlier, we also now punch a hole to come out through the top piece of the outsole. So we laminate the short outsole piece with the top outsole piece, and then apply some glue to this shorter end. Maybe give the top piece a second coat of glue, allow it to dry a bit, and then we can now install the back piece of the outsole to the back part. Before we do that, let's heat it up a little bit so that it dries properly and becomes as tacky as we want it, and it is able to stay and not move. So we will affix this to the back, and all that we will need to do is to use a pair of pliers to just clip things in place. We will hammer it, but in hammering it you have to take care that you are not reshaping the metal shank that we have already conformed to the shape of our last in the first place. So you hammer that. You can see that I'm hammering mainly around the front part and then at the edges, just to completely laminate it in place. So I hammer this. It may help to use the part of your anvil that doesn't have too much protrusion. Just hammer it. I'm not hammering at the metal shank itself. When I do that, it's basically very light taps to just get it to stay in place. And with that, our outsole, sorry, our insole, have I been calling it outsole? It's actually our insole. So we also punch through those pilot holes that we have there, so that when we put our screws to hold the heel in place, these are the pilot holes that we already have, and then those are, you know, the points where we are going to put in our screws that will hold our heel all together. So when we're done, we'll just sand out the edges. So this is ultimately what I came up to. I'll basically show you how I applied that piece of leather around the linings. So basically just add a piece of leather around it there, around the feather edge of the outsole, and add some leather in front where the foot will hold. You see that I've also installed a rivet on the front hole to go through the outsole, the insole, and the metal shank. So I'm going to take some time now to enjoy my coffee and come back to finish off the rest of the video of how we last this particular pair of zipper boot. But that is, I typically like my videos to stop around the 12-minute mark. So this is already 14 minutes. That's quite a lot of time. So I'll stop this one here and come back in the next class. But until then, God bless you and do have a good time. Peace.